Sit down.
Okay.
I'll buy you dinner after my.
How about me? I'm hungry. Just waiting for me.
No, it's good, yeah, we're on, we're live. Okay,
We're live.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm going to call the meeting of the work study group relative to the police commissioners to order. The time is 7:01 on October 7th. We are in the Aldermanic Chamber, and we're also available via Zoom teleconference. If you'd like that link, you can find it on the agenda as well as the city's website. We're gonna please call the roll.
Okay. Alderwoman Kelly,
I'm here.
Alderman Dowd,
He's at a planning meeting that is at the same time as this.
Eva Castillo, Mary Lou Blaisdell,
Here.
Mark Brave, Kendra Smith,
Here.
Deb Novotny, Kerry Baxter,
Here.
and Clerk Nick Dahl is present.
Great, thank you. Also in attendance, I see Police Chief, I am so tired. Krignan, that's a word. It's not on my list. We have Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Wilshire, Alderman Harriet Gathright, and Alderman Jetty joining us. Did I miss anybody? Commissioner Tolmer, Commissioner Plant. See, more coffee is needed in my life. I was really close. I was close. I had a 1 in 3 chance, right?
Yeah, that's right. 1 and 2 should make you tired.
This is true. That's right. Okay, so the discussion this evening is to allow a community discussion with wards 1, 4, 5, and 6. Wanted to just open this up like public comment. Has everybody been let in from the waiting room? That was a question to.
Yes, they have been.
Yes, okay, great.
Everybody's in.
So if people would like to make public comments, we'll do 3 minutes, name, address, and, your comments. If you have questions, those can be included in the comments. Is there anyone in the chamber that wishes to speak? I didn't see anything on the,
I would.
okay.
Is that okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, good evening. I just wanted to make some comments. These are my own. Other members of the committee may not feel the same as I do, but I just want to go on record with this. I realize we're all volunteers, busy with numerous other commitments, but I believe we need,
Sorry, name and address.
I'm sorry, Nick Dahl, 6 Indian Rock Road, Nashville.
Thank you.
I do believe that we need some increased communication and coordination between these meetings. Just as an example, last week's agenda had one item under the discussion portion of the meeting. It was the chief's presentation. The deputy chief came on behalf of the chief. He was not aware that he was expected to make a presentation. He thought he was here for question and answers. And during the meeting, we were also joined by Commissioner Shaheen from the Portsmouth Police Department. And I, as a committee member, was not aware that Ms. Shaheen had been invited. I may have missed something, but I believe others did not know as well, for the most part. I just bring that up because if we had known in advance, we may have been able to formulate questions in advance so that we could have taken fuller opportunity to learn about the selection process and function of the Portsmouth Police Commission. Frankly, I found that it was a missed opportunity because she took the time to join us, and we didn't take full advantage of that. Again, my opinion. Tonight's discussion item on the agenda is a Q&A session with executive counselors. However, it does not appear that any will attend. So given that, I am not sure what we plan or hope to accomplish tonight. And I know that sounds negative, but I just wanted to share my thought on that. I know the expected product from this work study group is longer term than the election on November 2nd, but I do believe some members of our community might be looking to this work study group for some education on the police commission selection process and functions prior to casting a ballot. As I already mentioned, I know we're all volunteers, but I would hope we could make better use of our limited time going forward. I am hopeful that as a study group, we can identify and agree on topics and speakers in advance of meetings, and ensure we obtain commitments from people we hope will add value to our efforts, and that we as a committee can have some level of communication between meetings so we know in advance who is invited and who plans to attend future meetings. And again, I know everyone is busy, we're all volunteering, and I know, for instance, the chair of the work study group has numerous other assignments on the Board of Aldermen. But those are my concerns. I thank you for listening.
Mary Lou, if you wouldn't mind holding, unless you, there is somebody from the public. I wanted to make sure that
It's
they get
fine.
to speak. Is that okay?
It's fine. Yes,
So there's a
thank
couple
you.
of people on Zoom from the public. I see, Mr. Ballantyne, did you want to make public comment? Maybe not.
I'm sorry, I didn't turn that on.
No, that's okay. You're fine. And then I see Sonia Prince. Those are the only two public I see.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I guess it's hard for me to take this committee super seriously when a lot of people that were chosen to be put on the committee were already openly against the
I'm sorry,
question.
Sonia, can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Oh, yes. Sonia Prince, 49 Tufts Drive. But, I mean, it's nice in all the conversations that we're having. But the idea of the committee giving a suggestion at the end, most of the people on the committee had openly said they were against it before it all started, is kind of one-sided. So I'll take it with a grain of salt, but I'm here because I don't want misinformation going around. Today, the chief said that the City Board of Aldermen had voted down the bill, which they didn't. You guys voted 8-6 to table it. So I just want to make sure there's no misinformation like that going out. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sonia. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Michael Kerrigan. I'm the Chief of the Nashville Police Department. I just want to thank each of the members of this committee. I just want to thank each of the members of this committee for taking your time to come and sit through this process. I disagree with other people saying that this process is unfair. People had opinions on both sides coming into it, including the chairwoman of this committee. So thank you for taking your time to sit and listen. I would ask that we have a little bit better definition of the direction we want to go. As I understand it correctly, the purpose of this committee is to evaluate the current system we have, the strengths and weaknesses. Is it a good system? Is it not? Does it need to be improved upon? And if so, where could it be improved upon? The other thing we wanted to do is look at other systems to include the one proposed or one of its many variants that was proposed and see if any of those would be good. And look at the whole process, look at all the positives and negatives for each side and come up with a system that is well thought out, well defined, and articulated. So I believe that each of you has the ability as representatives of Nashua, people with a vested interest in the city, to take a step back to listen and appreciate what the conversation and discussion is. The Nashville Police Department is committed to be open to new ideas. I think we've demonstrated that time and time again over the past several years that we are open to improving and working on things that we can do better. I appreciate you being willing to listen. I've committed to us being willing to make those same observations internally and externally to see what we can do better to make it the best PD even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ortolano.
Hi, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Now, I know I rolled in 5 minutes late, so I'm not certain if the discussion is done already on 1, 4, 5, and 6.
Nope, that's what we're on right now, and you may just want to make sure you're pointed at the mic.
Okay, perfectly. Fine. So public comment was below it, so I was confused. You know, I too would like to make certain that the group stays focused on its mission and what was discussed in the first meeting regarding gathering information from other communities and, you know, looking at what what would be the best option for Nashua. But I also have a recommendation because I've done a lot of footwork over the last couple of weeks out in the community. And I think those aldermen that voted to table this initiative, for whatever reasons you had, it would be helpful if you grouped together and wrote a letter that could be publicized as a letter to the editor or posted on Facebook that explained your position for wishing to table it. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that do not know that the aldermen voted to table it or that this was a split decision. I can assure you they absolutely do not know. And the word is not out there. So I think it's very important to be clear and to be clear with the public what your position is. I mean, I went to City Hall today to look at those petition verification sheets to see who verified those signatures. And the mayor personally verified 800 of those signatures out of the 2,000. He's motivated. He's also still going door to door. And today, as I talked to residents on one street, a group of them had received a phone call from him on this issue just recently. So he's calling, he's going door to door still, and he, witnessed 800 of these signatures. So there's a lot of motivation there on his part, certainly, to see this change happen. So I think I want to see the alderman who recommended tabling it for study be as motivated to pull together information, to sign a group letter, and put it out there very publicly as to why you voted to table it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Orlano. Anyone else from the chamber? Mary Lou?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I want to come back to a couple of points and kind of following up on what Committee Member Dawes just said. In our very first meeting, one of my main questions was, why now? Why now is the city looking at changing the way the police commissioner is set up? And I don't feel I've had an answer to that question. I also need to understand, because I'm getting various answers from members of the community, if in November, when this is voted on, if it is passed that, in fact, we do change the way the police commissioner is appointed, then it seems to me it is set that it will go forward. And I need clarification on that. And if that is true, then our committee is scheduled to continue meeting throughout the year. What impact and input will our committee have to the police commission if the citizens of Nashua state we want it changed from state appointment to local appointment? And I guess just to study the issue, I think we as a committee need to understand what works with the current setup of the police commission and what doesn't work and why do we need it changed? That is my basic question. I'm coming into this study with an open mind, I hope, trying to listen to both sides. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I need to know why it works today and why it doesn't work today and what we need to do to make it work. And I just think there's some basic issues, questions that we as a committee need to have answered, or I as a committee member need to have answered. Thank you.
I thought I saw someone else on the committee with their hand up. No? Okay. All right, so, go ahead, Kay.
Carrie Baxter, 31 Harris Street. I as well don't like to have misinformation out there, so I just like to clarify a point made earlier by Sonia Prince. The question was actually voted down 8-6, and then it was tabled with a 13-0 vote, which is contained within the minutes. That being said, I agree with both Nick and Ms. Blaisdell that we seem to be sort of spinning our wheels here without a whole lot of clear direction. I think we need to take a look at why it was recommended to have a study group study this issue. And then I also have some concerns with, regardless of which way the vote goes, what impact are we going to have on decisions moving forward? So if it's a yes and the commission is changed, we have a lot of work to do, and it would be unfortunate if all of our work was remiss and none of our suggestions or our input were taken into consideration.
Are you all set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna respond to some of this. I think, I appreciate all the comments from everybody. I think there's a lot to be done and there's a lot to figure out in terms of how we're going to do it. I believe at the beginning of this, we talked about not wanting to feel rushed in this discussion, but making sure we were being thoughtful about it. For my own part, I know we set an aggressive schedule of meeting twice a month, to an already busy aldermanic schedule, trying to get in here. And I have personally talked to multiple people about coming and have been trying to accommodate their schedules in terms of the mayor, the chief, past commissioners, that type of thing. It is definitely a hurdle to make sure people can get on despite even having the ability to do Zoom. So I hear your frustrations. I have them myself. But I would kind of reflect it back to this group of, we had originally talked about really doing the work in between our meetings. And I think some clear thoughts as to who do we want at the next meeting and who can help get them there would be helpful. And then who do we want when we only have 3 or 4 meetings before the election. We have the 18th, the 21st, and next Thursday as well. So of those 3 meetings, can we just spend the time, since there's, this is a smaller group of public than I was expecting, coming up with what we want to talk about and who we want to have at those meetings? Does that sound like a good way forward here? Okay. I actually think one of the things we should do is take advantage of having the chief here if there are questions that we want to ask him directly. And then we can talk about what we want to do with the next 3 meetings. I personally heard from someone, like, what is working with the current system. I thought you may want to, just from a factual standpoint, talk to us about how it's working, what happens, and why you feel it works. Yeah, you can come, come, you don't have to be in the public comment.
Thank you, Alderwoman Kelly. Thank you, Alderwoman Kelly. I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about what's working currently with the Police Commission.
Can you just state your name?
Yes, I apologize.
That's okay for
My name is
transcript.
Michael Carrigan, Chief of Police of the Nashville Police Department. So I appreciate you asking us to talk about what's working with the Police Commission currently. And I've said it many times before, what isn't working with the Nashville Police Department? We are a model agency for everybody in the state and everybody in New England. We are looked to as leaders among law enforcement throughout the entire community, throughout the entire New England. People call for advice, people call for our help, people call for our expertise all over. We are nationally accredited. It is a distinction that is held by only 5% of all law enforcement agencies. And amongst those accredited, we hold the highest accreditation certificates. We currently have a process to hire officers that is industry best practice standards. We spend time with a written test, a physical test, an interview with 3 supervisors, then they have to go to a lieutenant or a captain, then they get to a deputy chief interview, then they're given a polygraph interview, then they have to take a polygraph examination, then they have to do a physical fitness test, a physical test with a doctor, and they have to meet with a psychologist. In addition to that, several officers will go through all of their previous employees, their residents, their friends, their best friends, cousins, their ex-girlfriends, their mom and dad. So the process that we go through before we hire anybody at the Nashville Police Department is extensive. It is more extensive than anything else that I can think of in this city. Each of those candidates are presented to the commissioners who are aware of the process that goes on to vet them out. When I tell you that, we are unable to discuss issues with certain people that apply and are rejected, I will tell you that some of the things that process vets out would shock many people at who's applying for law enforcement positions. And each of the commissioners are aware of the issues and they understand the process where we eliminate those people. An example, 2 weeks ago, we had approximately 150 people sign up for a police recruit exam. At the end of the day, we had 17 interviews. People failed the written test, people failed the PT test. We had 17 candidates. Of those 17, we have 2 we're prepared to put forward. That is how rigorous this process is, and those 2 have not even gone through the extensive background process yet. So the commission is aware of that. They, at 2 levels, get to review those candidates and vote on those people. So that is a system that is working very well. I believe each of you have complimented the National Police Department many times on many different issues and many different topics. The reason you can compliment them is because we spend all that time hiring and recruiting the right people. In addition to all of that, we train those people. We give them constant training. We're constantly looking for new areas to train them in. For example, as of late, you've heard a lot of cultural competency and diversity training. We have done exceptional amounts of training on that. We've had people go out and get certified as trainers to be able to provide that training to the officers internally. We've also dealt extensively with mental health issues. We have trained officers, not only peer-to-peer and every officer receiving a minimum of 8 hours, but over 20% of our workforce now has 40 additional hours of critical incident training that they're better able to handle the mental health. We're not the same police department as when I started. We change, we evolve, we improve. We're always looking for room to improvement. And each of those major things that we do, we present to the police commissioners who listen, they ask questions, and then they approve or disapprove what we do. They certainly give guidelines. They are all residents of Nashua. They have lived here for many years. They are all active participants in the community. Commissioner Nick Dahl, I know he's on this committee, is very, very active and has been for years in Nashua PAL. Some people align that with being part of the police department. PAL is not part of the police department. We work cooperatively with them. Their mission is to connect kids with cops. Why wouldn't we get with them? That's their mission. They do a great job teaching kids in the inner city community about volunteerism, about homework, the importance of grades, mentorship. All of those are lessons that we as police officers want these kids to know because we won't be dealing with them in a negative way. It also gives us an opportunity to meet with those kids at a different level other than being reactive. We can get to know them, they can see us, we can play ball with them, we can help them do homework, we can take them pumpkin picking. These are all things that we do as police officers that gives these kids an opportunity to see us. In addition to that, Commissioner Dahl is his outside employment as an auditor for the federal government. He audits finances and policies for the federal government. Why wouldn't I want him as a police commissioner? He goes through our books every single month, asks questions. He's not afraid to call our finance manager and ask her questions about anything he sees is wrong. Alderman Jetty, you were our liaison officer for a year. You are aware of the scrutiny that goes into the finances. You asked many, many questions, and I believe every time you had a question, they were answered. These commissioners aren't afraid to ask the questions, so it's working. I say all that to really emphasize that there is currently no issues with the Nashville Police Department in the way it's being run. The commissioners are selected as members of the community. They're active, upstanding members. They listen to what the experts at the police department say. And I say experts not to sound arrogant, but I tell you that for 28 years I've been a police officer. I've worked as a patrolman, I've worked as a detective, I've worked in undercover, I've worked in many different areas of that police department that gives me experience in being aware of where the crimes are, where the problems are, and how to deal with them. I have a master's degree in business, as does one of my deputies. Several of my captains have or are working towards master's degrees in business, which gives them a sense of how to manage the $35 million budget that we have. We have to present that budget every year to the police commission. Again, they ask questions, They want to know what we spend our money on. Every single month, we show them. Every single month, we show the 3 police commissioners who are Nashville residents, as well as the 1 to 2 aldermen that are at every meeting, listening and also able to ask questions. There's plenty of local control in how that works right now. And I think that to look at all that and look at the product that the citizens are getting. And I know last week we all got an email that said Nashville was the 3rd safest city in the country. That's pretty impressive. And it's not number 3 for no reason. It's a reason because it has a great police department that works very hard to connect with the community. And that police department is oversaw by 3 Nashville residents who care about the community, who pay taxes, who have raised their kids here, and who really care about Nashville. They ask questions, they don't rubber stamp everything we say, and they're privy to some private stuff that most people can't be aware of. So the question is, what is working with the police commission right now? I think everything is working. There are no problems that you can point out. The last point I want to bring up regarding the commission now is the diversity of the board. I've been very vocal. I've been very active in the Nashville Police Department in trying to diversify our officers and our civilian employees. I think it's critical to the community for people to see different faces and different looks when they're coming. Alderwoman Gathright, I believe you and I have worked very closely together for years to try to accomplish this. It's not easy. You said it the other night. It's not easy to do, but we're trying very hard and we're doing it. I don't have a say in who is selected as a police commissioner, but I will say the people that do have not opted to present names. I've said it before recently that Commissioner Dahl was recently reappointed. For the past several months, I've been speaking about somebody calling the governor and just presenting a name. Well, not one person who has been complaining about this issue presented a name of color, of a person of color, or a female up to the governor for consideration. So I ask, how big of a problem is it? I would love to see a diversified board. I would love to have the discussion to move it from 3 to 5 people on that board. I think it's important for a broad spectrum of people to be there, and I'd be absolutely willing to entertain it. I think it would be a healthy thing for the department. But I also think that bringing in that local political control to appoint those 5 is dangerous and it can go down a bad slope. I think the issue needs to be discussed, it needs to be looked at, and if 5 is the issue that was mentioned in court today where it was more about bringing it from 3 to 5 people, that can be done with the system that's already in place. And I want to caution everybody to remember that politicians are in office for a short period of time. There can be one political party one time, a couple years later, another political party comes up. They change. So the flavor of the day right now may change. If the roles were reversed, I think this conversation probably wouldn't be happening at this time. But it is, but I want everybody to remember the big picture long term and look at the quality of the police department you have. Long-winded answer, and I apologize, but I think it's important to put that out there.
You don't have to apologize, Chief. I appreciate it. I jotted down some questions, but I can hold mine for other committee members. Go ahead.
Thank you. Chief, I'm glad you brought up the fact about being open to going from 3 to 5. I would like to hear what you have to say as far as your opinion on that, pros and cons, and let's not right now concern ourselves with where those people come from or how they're appointed, but just how it would work, pros and cons as far as getting people in a room. I obviously have some knowledge, having worked at the police department, that sometimes it can be difficult just to get the 3 commissioners along with 2 deputy chiefs and a chief and all the schedules to match up. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are as far as 3 versus 5, pros and cons for each.
Thank you, Carrie. It's a great question, and I don't think there is a need for 5 aldermen. Correct, I'm sorry, for 5 commissioners on the committee.
You getting rid of 5 of us?
We have 5. Apologize. We have 3 commissioners, and as I said before, 1 to 2 aldermen are usually present. To have 3 can be challenging to make sure you have a quorum, to make sure you have enough people there to get the vote going. It's also adding 2 more people to be privy to a lot of background information and a lot of personnel information. There's been a lot of discussion about, every other, commission in the city operates this way. Police departments are different. We deal with very sensitive information. We deal with classified information. We deal with things that the commissioners will have to be vetted on. So to broaden that from 3 to 5, it's putting out that much more information. I'm sure the people that are selected will be able to handle that and manage it, and will be vetted out to do it. It's just, I don't see the need for 5. I don't see what the added value to having 2 extra people, other than giving an opportunity immediately to diversify that commission.
May I ask a follow-up to that?
Sure can.
Thank you. You hit on some of the information that these commissioners are privy to with regards to it being very sensitive, both with criminal investigations and personnel, in-house situations. Without getting into specific situations, can you discuss a little bit about that so that the other people on this committee, in the study group, and people listening have a sense of what it is that's involved? It's a little bit different than everything that is public record or talking about something that happens on a road or a variance.
Sure, and I appreciate that. Our police commission meetings are set up in basically 2 different areas, public and non-public. The public gets access to all the crimes that's been reported over the past month, and it goes through every division of the police department to highlight some of the things of significance that happened over that month. Including in that portion is a presentation of our budget, of where we are at the fiscal year, how much we spend, where we're spending our money, what our functional strength is, and stuff like that. In a non-public meeting is where all the sensitive information is presented. Included in that is the backgrounds of the people that apply to be police officers. And those backgrounds get pretty extensive. They're privy to the information about some of their criminal backgrounds, or what could be perceived as criminal backgrounds, or some potential issues that would hurt their reputation if it was made public. Now, we don't necessarily hire those people. However, they get that information as part of being a police commissioner. The commissioners are also brought up to speed on internal investigations. So they're aware of when an internal complaint comes in, what the allegations are, what the status of the investigation is, and what the outcome is. They're also the final arbiters for any internal investigations, meaning they're presented in any discipline. They'll make a decision on what the outcome should be, and they are the final right to appeal that discipline from the officer or from the civilian, whomever it may be. So they have to review all that and present that. Finally, there's not oftentimes, thankfully, there are times when we as an agency get asked to do sensitive information involving other city entities. That's obviously very highly sensitive, and it can't be information that's put out until it's completely investigated and found to be unfounded or founded, in which case we would investigate it. So they're privy to a degree to a lot of that information. They're also inside the building with access to the computers, which means they have to be vetted out. Seasons compliant officers to be able to go through training to know what they can and cannot see and use on that computer. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Other committee members, I'm making sure I'm not missing anyone on the, go ahead, Mary Lou.
Chief, you mentioned that the commissioners are also vetted. Who vets them, and what kind of a vetting process takes place for a commissioner?
Sure, it's a good question. Because they would be my boss, the investigation of their background is done by the New Hampshire State Police.
Okay.
Colonel Noyce will call, hey, we have a new police commissioner, can you do a background? So we will do the CJIS computer training to allow them to use the computer inside the house, but the state police will do the criminal background, and they'll make sure all of those protocols are followed. And then in the event that there's an issue, they'll let us know, but I believe they also let the executive council know. That I can't confirm though.
Thank you.
I have a number of questions. Okay, so actually to follow on to that question there, you were talking about the vetting is done by the state police, but you were talking about before of that, the commissioner to my left was just reappointed, but nobody was able to weigh in. I'm really interested in like, who can weigh in and how are they told that they're able to weigh in?
Well, I guess like any committee in the city, if you look, if you do just a little bit of research, you can find out how to get appointed. And in the event of the police commissioners, you can call up to the governor's office and put your name up there for consideration. That name gets, I would assume, gets submitted with several other names, and a decision is made which to bring forward. And that decision would be based on meeting the requirements of who is a Nashville resident, who is an active, upstanding member of the city, of the community. And then the governor will decide who he or she feels is the best candidate and present them to the executive council for approval.
So to clarify, the governor can reject anybody in that first round
Correct,
before it even goes to council.
correct.
And then my next follow-on question was about requirements. So Nashville resident is important, but you were also talking about having a certain level of expertise. Maybe this is an opinion question, but what makes a good commissioner?
So I definitely think that's an opinion question, and my answer is what makes a good commissioner is a diverse commissioner. And by that, I mean you have a broad set of experiences as Nashville residents to be able to sit on. You have to step back and ask yourself, what is the role of a commissioner? What does the role of a police commissioner need to be? A police commissioner should not be somebody that tries to oversee the day-to-day operations of the police department. And no disrespect to any police commissioner, current or past, but they don't have the law enforcement experience or the up-to-date training that and the daily experience that the members of my staff have in running that police department. That's our job. If we're not doing it well and there's complaints, it's their job to ask questions and complain and make sure that I can explain what we're doing, and if I can't, answer why. And if I can't provide those answers, then my job is at stake, because that's my responsibility, is to be able to do that. So what makes a good commissioner is a person that can listen, is a person that has a good sense of community, that understands the community of Nashville and has been here for a while, and understands that their purpose is to represent the citizens of Nashville to ensure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as a police agency.
So, and this is opinion, but how many of the commissioners now were past police officers or police department employees?
There was one, Commissioner Matt Plant. And I will speak openly about it because I know he and I have had conversations. Commissioner Plant was a police officer in the early 80s. He was a police officer for, I believe, 4 years. He resigned his position, not because of any internal investigation. It was because of payments not being, or financially, he had better opportunities. And that was very common at that time. People didn't do the 20, 25 years in bulk like they did back then. Certain allegations have been made public about his role as a police officer and being investigated and being terminated, or being sued and having the city had to pay out. It's not uncommon for police officers to become involved in arrests where people sue. And it's also, if you dig deep into that situation, you would know that the commissioner had an investigation done. He went to an outside agency for that investigation. A polygraph was done. He was exonerated. So there was nothing for him to hide. He was a police officer for a couple of years, had no supervisory experience, and to my knowledge, had no detective experience, which to me gives him a very limited experience in running that police department.
Okay, great. I'm gonna ask a question that's not on this topic anymore. Just wanted to check the room to see if anyone else has questions. Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. Chief, you talked about the fact that Commissioner Dahl was just reappointed, and that, that to your knowledge, and I think you said that you verified this with the governor's office, no one from the city put forth a name to be a replacement commissioner.
So just for a point of record, my statement was, I called it that morning, and nobody from the mayor or the Board of Aldermen presented a name to be considered.
So are you aware of anything that the governor did or the governor's office did to solicit any input from the city, whether it was the mayor, the Board of Aldermen, or the general public in Nashua, to alert them that the commissioner was being seeking reappointment, and that, did the governor do anything to ask people whether they had any feedback about, how the, and I know nothing, of that would disqualify Commissioner Dahl, but did the governor's office or the executive council seek any information from people in Nashua about, whether they thought Commissioner Dahl was doing a good job, and or whether, they had a replacement to suggest to the governor? Do you know of anything that was done in that regard?
Well, I do not know who they spoke to or who anyone spoke to, if anyone. I know I was not asked any questions about Commissioner Dahl.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Could I continue?
Sure.
So, you also said that, you talked about the hiring practices, and the training, and the fact that the department has improved over the years. I think those are all truthful statements. I think the department does have very good hiring practices and excellent training. I've heard that people, recruits, people who want to become police officers in Nashua, one of the reasons they seek the position is because of the excellent training that's provided. But could you help me understand why do you think any of that would change if the commissioners were selected in a different way?
Sure. I appreciate the question. And as I've been saying all along, my deepest concern here, first and foremost, I'm not accusing any, despite what's being said, I'm not accusing any sitting alderman or mayor of doing this. What I'm saying is, when you have the local political control and influence, there is a much greater vested interest in what's happening, meaning in a negative way. Meaning if the potential is much greater for a person in local government who's nominating and renominating police commissioners to have loyalties owed to them. So, yep, I'll nominate you again. Sure, you want to be police commissioner, I'll nominate you. It brings a closer level to Nashua and influence from Nashua than the state does. So the governor does it now, the executive council reviews it, feels that they're good choices, and approves them. To have that local control, to me, is dangerous because it allows a little bit more influence with people that are vested closer to. And there's a couple examples I will give. If you look at cities like Methuen, Massachusetts, they just went through a crisis situation with their police department where nephews, brothers, family members were being hired from all different people within internally. Friends of the local politicians were being hired and brought onto that police department. And they had many difficulties and many problems with that PD. When you start bringing in that local influence, number one, people within the agency don't feel like they can succeed on their own merit. They feel like there's definitely political play involved as far as who you know, not necessarily what you do. By having that control outside of local politics in Nashua, the officers know that they're going to be promoted based on their merit. They're going to be promoted based on the job that they do. They don't have to worry about who they know. And the closer you bring that to home, the more likely that's going to happen. It may not happen overnight. November 3rd, if this vote goes through, the Nashua Police Department of the city of Nashua is not going to explode. But over time, the reputation is going to erode, and people will be less willing to come up here because it's the same old, same old. Well, we don't go to Massachusetts because it's who you know a lot down there. In a lot of those communities, who do you know and who are you related to? In Nashua, that's not the case. And that gives people confidence that they can come up here, they can do their job, they can work hard, and they can progress at the level that they deserve without having to worry about that political influence of who you know. And I think that's the critical risk that we're running by making this change.
Could I ask another?
Sure.
So currently, the system is that the governor nominates a commissioner, and the governor's council approves or disapproves the commissioner. But to become a commissioner, you have to be nominated by the governor and approved by the executive council.
Correct.
Now, currently, for a long time, the governor of New Hampshire has not been a resident of Nashua. And the executive counselors have kind of switched. You know, right now, Councilor Wheeler lives in Milford. We've had Councilor Pignatelli, who is a Nashua resident, and they've kind of switched back and forth over the years. When Councilor Pignatelli was a Nashua resident, was on the executive council, I'm not aware, and I guess I would ask you, did she exercise any undue influence over the police department?
She didn't, and you're making my point for me, so I appreciate that. She didn't because she is separated at that state level. She has much less vested interest in the day-to-day operations of Nashua. The government that she controls the state. She's vetted the people out, she's evaluated them and knows that they're solid, good people deserving of this position. But she doesn't have that local control into the day-to-day operations. She's not picking, she's not daily beholden to different citizens for that to the level that the mayor and the aldermen are, right? So when you have it outside, when you have the current situation with Executive Councilor Wheeler, he's not a Nashua resident, but they still go through the vetting process. And to me, that's even better because it says, okay, these people live in Nashua, they're people that will represent Nashua Police Commissioners well. They deserve to be there based on what we see in their background or what we've heard about their resume. But then they're not, they have no vested interest to try to get that person to influence who gets hired or put forward a name or get that 69 to make it a 70. There's a lot less separation there. Is there a risk there that it could happen? Of course there is. There's a small degree, but it's separated, to me, local to state, and that separation makes it much easier to be able to keep that out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Of course. Ready? Oh, Alderman Wilshire, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to just comment on something that the chief brought up about, the quality of our police department and how it's sought after by police officers, people who want to be in the best department they can be, and that's why they come to Nashua. There's nothing wrong with what's going on at our police department at all. We have the best police department, bar none, in the state of New Hampshire, in New England, and one of the best, I would say, in the country. To change that for no good reason, I haven't heard a good reason why this needs to be changed. What is going wrong at our police department or with our police commission that we need to make a change like this? Nothing that I've heard, nothing that says, hey, we better do this or else, or, something's gonna happen. Nothing. So my concern is valid, I think, that once you start appointing local people, hey, I'll reappoint you next term, but I don't want you to vote on the budget. I want you to cut the budget. I want you to cut ammunition. I want you to cut this or that. And it starts to erode. We have the best police department, and our citizens deserve the best police department. That's what we have, and I think it would be a shame for us to change that because that's what they've come to they deserve it.
Can I follow up with one point?
Of course.
So along the lines of the budget, and thank you, Alderman Wilshire, along the lines of the budget and the control that we have, you aldermen control my budget. You tell me what I can and cannot spend. I've been fortunate enough that over the past couple of years, I've been able to articulate why we need the money that we need and how we go about spending it and what we're looking to do. And you've listened, and even though some of you disagree with that, you have supported us to get us what we need to do our jobs. There hasn't always been times when we have been supported by the alderman. There's been times when the alderman says, no, we're not going to give you that money. And okay, I have to work within that budget. I work within my means. A classic example of that is the police commission has authorized me to have 187 police officers. We're only budgeted for 179. I can't hire any more than 179 because the aldermen have not given me the money to do so. That's control. That's control. It limits what the police commission says I can do, but the local national politicians say, nope, you can't because we're not going to give you that money. I will try to continue to explain why I want the money and why I need the 187, but if you say no, I don't get it. Local control also shows what I explained earlier, 1 to 2 of you coming to our meetings each month asking questions. It is a meeting like any other city meeting, but we're pretty open, as you know, about allowing questions to be asked. If you had a question about the budget, we would answer it. If you have any questions off meeting time about our budget, Ms. Smith would welcome you in and have you sit down and explain to you any of the questions. That's local control. You're at that meeting asking us questions. If you have concerns, you're presenting them publicly. And I don't recall any issues publicly being brought up by the commission, the aldermanic liaisons to our Alderman Jettie. You were very vocal about our budgets and you weren't afraid to pick it apart and ask us questions. We answered them all, I think to your satisfaction. Didn't always agree together, but that's what we did. You wanted to know what was going on. Any different question was fair game and we would answer it for you. And that's local control. So please don't assume that the system, but right now it's completely beholden to the governor. The aldermen have control of our police department. I can only spend what you guys authorize me to spend.
Thank you, Chief. I had a question. I know there's some discussion around investigations and previous, boards of aldermen that have investigations. Can you just talk a little bit about that process? If it were to happen right now and you needed to investigate the Board of Aldermen, where would that start and where would it go?
So if a complaint come in right now of an offense committed by an alderman, we would open an investigation and it would depend on what the allegations were. We would make the police commission aware that there was an investigation and we would proceed to investigate it like we would any other crime. If it rose to a certain level, and I can't give you a definitive answer of what that threshold is, the FBI may be notified, or the appropriate federal agency may be notified, or the Attorney General's office may be notified. Again, I can't give you what that threshold is. It's a discussion that we would have. But we would certainly investigate that crime, and whatever happens, if we are able to determine probable cause that an offense was committed, we would do an arrest warrant and bring charges forward.
Thank you. So there is a certain case in the past that's been talked about. Is that the same process that happened with that case?
Yeah, so I will, my answer to that question is, you've heard former Chief Heffron speak of those allegations. I think it's appropriate, since he has the firsthand knowledge of that investigation, that this committee asks him. You're asking me to give you information, that I've read off a report or talked to from different people. He was part of that investigation. He spoke to the witnesses, and I think it's appropriate. He's accessible to ask him those questions.
I would very much like to be able to contact him so we can talk after.
If you send me an email, he's more than willing to speak to you.
Okay, great. Carrie, go ahead.
Chief, with regards to other investigations in the city that the Nashville Police Department has been involved in, can you just touch on what other investigations that Nashville PD has had to handle with regards to other complaints from other divisions or whatnot in the city?
Sure. Some of the investigations were never prosecuted, so I'll be careful about what I give for information. I don't generally like to present this committee with vague scenarios, but if charges weren't brought forward and some of those cases are sensitive and private, I'm not going to give details on them. But we have investigated local city officials for various narcotics or drug complaints, theft complaints involving city property, different allegations of misuse of funds and department or city property, whether it be certain things used to repair things in the city. So there's been different divisions have been investigated for different offenses. We've also been asked to provide assistance with internal investigations from those departments if there's an allegation committed We have the expertise in conducting an internal investigation and the history of being able to do so. So they'll ask our advice on how to do that.
And is that information shared with the current commissioners?
There is information that at the appropriate time they will be made aware of, correct? They don't necessarily know all the people involved from the beginning until we are able to substantiate any criminal offenses or criminal charges.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Alderman Harry Cathright.
Okay, the scenarios, Chief, that you just gave us, are you saying that if commissioners were chosen by the Board of Aldermen or the mayor, as in as in the bill that we have, well, it's not even a bill anymore, but do you think that my question is, do you believe with this scenario that if it was, the commissioners were chosen by the board, that you would not be able to do what you just talked about? You gave about 6, 7 different scenarios. So is that what you're saying, that it would not happen that way?
Nope, nope. And you brought that point up a couple of times, and I want to clarify it because you've misinterpreted how we've presented that information, Alderman. We would still do the investigation, but it would be a lot more difficult because there would be political pressure put on different levels of the police department to maybe not look into an investigation, or to not dig as deep into it, or to let us handle it and just ignore it if it's a crime. We would have to still investigate that crime, and we would do so. However, it would be done with a lot of nervousness and a lot more anxiety and trepidation on the officers' part. So the officers of the National Police Department are held to the higher standards. They will do their job, but it would be more difficult, and there would be a lot more anxiety and pressure put on them to do that because of the political influences that are being exerted.
Okay, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing you saying that the board that's elected by the constituents would put so much pressure on you or on the police department that you're not quite capable of doing the job the way you typically would do it, because you would be frustrated or feel pressured because it's the board that's the board that selected the commissioners.
What I'm saying is we would do the job, and it would just be more difficult, and it's one more piece of influence and pressure that we would have to deal with where we shouldn't have to deal with, which we don't have to deal with now.
Okay. What I hear with that, to be honest with you, is what I'm hearing is that the people that are elected here in this room to serve the people of Nashville, that they're not straight up honest people. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, unfortunately, Alderwoman Gathright, I believe you're hearing wrong. You're not listening to me. I believe that we would do that job, and I'm not saying that there's anybody in the city right now that would behave that way, but there could be, and that's the risk that you're running. And there doesn't need to be, because the system we have now gives an extra layer of isolation, of insulation for the officers doing that job. I'm not saying that there's corruption, but in the past there has been. There has been that influence from aldermen putting pressure on the police not to do a certain investigation. They did it, and the alderman went to federal prison for it. But it's still very difficult to do. Now we don't have to deal with that. And it was easier for them to do because they didn't have to worry about those phone calls the aldermen were making. They didn't have to worry about the pressures put on, well, I'm gonna be voting on your budget in 6 months, so, we'll do what we have to do. We'll do the investigation, but it's one less set of pressures that we have to deal with. And am I saying that anyone on this board would do that? Absolutely not. So please, make it very clear, not accusing anybody on this board of doing that. But what I'm saying is a greater risk because of the changes you want to bring.
All set, Alderman Cathright.
Yeah, for now.
Okay. Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. Chief, coincidentally, I happened to I'm a lawyer, and I happened to be talking to a client who had come to me for his father had died, and he was asking me to help him with the probate of the estate. And it just happened that this guy, during our conversation, he told me that he was a former police officer in Dover, and that he was now working, with the sheriff's department in Stratford County, and that he also was a trainer for CALIA, or an evaluator, or whatever, and that he went all around the country, you know better than I, doing the job that CALIA does to certify police departments. And I told him about, what the issue that we're dealing with in Nashville, about whether to change from, the current system to a system, to having the commissioners appointed by the mayor and president of the Board of Aldermen and confirmed by the Board of Aldermen. And I told him of your, the concern that you had expressed and Chief Heffernan had told us about. And I said, what do you say to that? Dover, by the way, they have a different system than we have. And I said, what do you think of that? And he said that it is against the law to interfere with a police investigation, and that any whether it was a selectman or alderman or city councilor who tried to stop the police from doing an investigation or try to influence an investigation would be violating the law and would be subject to, arrest or referral to the county attorney or the attorney general's office. So what do you say about that?
Well, to reinforce what I said to Alderwoman Gathright, we would do our job and we would enforce it. It's just more difficult. It's puts a lot of pressure on the officers to do it, and it puts just a lot of caution in how they go about doing their job. So it makes it very difficult when it shouldn't be difficult. They should be able to go in and conduct an investigation properly. I would say we would investigate those in the situations, but it would be more difficult, and it would be just a situation presented, putting these officers in that they wouldn't need to be. And remember, I'm not talking just about the investigations. I'm talking about the hiring processes. I'm talking about those daily decisions. That's all those influences add up, and the more local you keep it. Now, regarding your friend, I would welcome him or her to come in here and testify in front of this committee as to those opinions, because I think it offers valuable insight. I know for a fact that Bill Pease, who is a very well established and respected CALIA assessor, is going to be speaking in front of you in a couple of weeks. He'll be there to answer any questions. I'm sure he would welcome the dialogue with your friend to confirm that stuff. So to answer your question, it is against the law, and we would investigate it, and we would complete the investigation properly and make arrests where appropriate. But I'm saying it's more difficult, and all those little local influences make it more difficult, and a job that's already very difficult, and a job that right now is being done without those difficulties, and it's being done very well.
All
Thank
set,
you.
Alderman Juddy?
Yes, thank you.
Looking at my work study committee members on Zoom, making sure I didn't miss any hands or questions there. Oh, Kendra, your hand looks like it's up. Is that intentional?
Yes, so I just have a question for the chief. I guess as just the average person off the street who kind of got brought into this committee to learn, my question kind of mimics Ms. Gathwright's comment. From the average person, it kind of seems like when we're voting for our local aldermen, right, and our mayor, that's our job as the constituents to put them in place, right? So I hear you saying that you don't trust us to put the proper people in place to be your boss, and then you don't want your boss in your building to actually oversee what you're doing. That's kind of like what the average person hears, or at least that's what I'm hearing.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, and I wish I was presenting the information more effectively, because apparently it's being misconstrued. I don't have a mistrust with the alderman or the mayor. I work very closely with them. We work on a number of projects. We've worked very, very closely together. We've been able to work effectively. My point is that local influence, that local level of influence, political influence, can change and alter the day-to-day operations. Again, it's that much closer to someone to say, well, we're going to the budget, or the mayor really wants to see this, and he appointed us, so we're going to kind of focus that way. It just brings that in and makes it more difficult for us to do our job, and it just brings a level of political influence that doesn't need to be there.
And I feel like the integrity of the police officers, the commissioners that are being put into office has to be brought into play then, because you're going to do the right thing whether somebody's watching you or not, correct?
Well, again,
That's the point.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. We would do the right thing, but that local influence makes it more difficult. And again, I would challenge you to speak with former Chief Heffron, who was the investigating detective at the time, who did the right thing, charges were brought forward, but he would be able to give you that firsthand experience of what that was like. And it shouldn't have to be there. And the people of Nashville, I guess the message I want to get to you is, we have a system that keeps that out and still maintains a high level of local control. And by doing that, you as a citizen get the best of both worlds. You get the local control, you get the oversight by the alderman, and you get the knowledge and the relief to know that there isn't that local political influence. Because again, you may feel strongly about one political candidate and the other one is in power, and you may not like the decisions that are being made there. So the police department will do our job. We have done it, and we've shown we will do it. But it just keeps that level of insulation, which I think the public would want.
I think we should respect the public's opinion, and if they vote on it and that's what they want, then that's what we should do. I mean, it's our city. You know what I mean? It doesn't just belong to the, just a small group of people who feel like they make decisions for everybody. I personally didn't know anything about this until I was asked to be on the committee. So the average Joe has no clue how any of this is done. It's just done.
So I guess I have to ask.
Honestly, like, not just speaking on this topic, but being somebody, a citizen who's grown up here since I was 13 years old. I'm 44 now. I know you as a police officer. I'm sure you recognize my face. However, I feel like the knowledge is not there for the average Joe to even know what's going on. Like, these changes just happen. There's a lot of things that are going on in Nashville right now that I'm just now learning, because a lot of people are bringing me in to be that voice, because I feed the kids and I do a lot in the community. But people just don't know these things. Like, it's not out there for people to see. Like, can I call and say, hey, I want Linda Gathright to be the next commissioner? I would never know that. And is that even possible? Like, if a group of people can call the governor, and then it's always political. The governor's still going to put in who they feel, even if we feel somebody else would be better for that position.
Also, let me ask you, what issues do you have the way the system is currently being run that you would change?
I'll be completely honest. I think diversity is the biggest thing. And I also think that diversity training for the police officers is a huge thing that hasn't been going on for years. That's just now being implemented. The cameras, those should have been on. There's so many things that go on in Nashua. Let's see, I've worked in the school for the last 6 years. Why do we not have metal detectors? Why are children allowed to bring knives and guns into these schools? Like, there's a lot of things that are going on that should be fixed.
Okay.
So it's not like little minor stuff.
Can I address some of those issues? The issue of
Absolutely.
the metal detectors in the school is not an issue from the police department. That's an issue for the school board. We can't make that decision for the schools, so that has to be there. The issues of knives and guns being brought into school, there's a very, very, very low level of violence in the Nashville school system. So I don't see that.
As a parent, I'd rather have none, but that's okay.
Well, so would everybody, and as a
I agree.
as a person, I'd like to see no crime in this world, but that's not the reality, and we have to deal with that. We have a system now that has been working very well, and I think you as a business owner would agree that Nashville's a very safe city. I would hope that you feel safe at night knowing that the Nashville Police
Sometimes.
Department is here. We are professional, we're well-trained. Regarding the diversity training, for the past 4 years, we've been working very hard to get all of our officers culturally competency training to the point where even the command staff has gone through levels of being able to teach that to outside agencies. We teach at the academy, we teach all police officers. Our officers are trained to do the instruction. They teach those officers, everyone in the state, about cultural awareness, about diversity, about de-escalation techniques. That's the Nashville Police Department doing those teachings up there. We're instructing that. We have been working very, very hard to become a culturally effective organization. That is not something that's happening with outside influences. That's a decision we are making as an agency to really dial in and be a part of the community and respect and work with every person of color, every person of disability, every person of various genders. Those are all trainings that we do on a regular basis, dealing with mental health people, like I spoke to earlier. We're working very hard to effectively work with all of them, and all that's being done with the approval of the current police commission. And again, I would say, if you look to the National Police Department, we are leaders among all law enforcement in New England, in New Hampshire, in New England, and I think that should tell you, okay, so we're doing it right. We should have other people, strive to be more like the National Police Department.
Are you all set, Kendra?
Yes, I don't think that has really anything to do with the practices of the police department, maybe just the way that you guys are elected. Should be a little more, a little more public for people to know when the election is, who's being selected, and how they're being selected.
All set? Okay. I actually had a question, Chief, around, you've been talking about this influence piece. One of the things in the legislation was how the commissioners are removed, and changing that. There are commissioners here who can talk about what the current system is, but, I would love to hear your thoughts on what's in the legislation in terms of how they could be removed.
So as I understand the legislation correctly, a police commissioner can be removed at the will of the mayor with the approval of the Board of Aldermen. Now, I'm not sure if that's the majority or if it is a 10 to 5 majority or just a simple majority. It's not very clear what those mechanisms are. It's not really clear what the mechanisms in that legislation are to handle how that process works. It's also not clear, there's vague language in there regarding current sitting commissioners who may be related to a current alderman. In one section, it says that can't happen. In another section, it says current aldermen will be, police commissioners will be able to serve out their term. So there's definitely some issues with the legislation that would need to be hashed out and worked out for clarification.
Can either of the commissioners that are here talk about if something were to happen, or I guess I'll put it to the whole, like, if they wanted to remove one now, it's not the mayor's approval, how does it work?
So I guess the process would be that the governor approves the removal of the police commissioner based on whatever the allegations are. And that those allegations could be presented by the police department, by the alderman, or by anybody really, if they have a factual basis to do so. They could present it to the governor to remove the current police commissioner.
Would it have to go to the executive council, or can the governor just do it on his own accord?
I don't want to answer that and give you bad information.
No, that's fair. This is a piece of it that I particularly didn't like.
I've never gone through that process, so I don't know what that mechanism is from the governor down to the executive council, but I'm sure we could get you an answer.
We got a few weeks, right? Okay, I'll jot that down as something that we still have a question on. Did I see a hand over here?
I did.
Alderman.
I changed my
Eric
mind.
Geffert.
I'm good.
Oh, you
Thanks.
changed your mind, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just jotting down my note. Anyone over here? Okay. So I think we've had a really good discussion tonight. Thank you for being here, Chief. I pulled up my notes on our upcoming meetings and what was currently listed. Last week we were gonna have chief here, we had deputy chief, this week we have the chief here. Executive councils, we are still trying to pin down a day where they could meet us. So the next upcoming meetings here, this is the 7th, right? Today's the 7th. Is Monday, the 18th, which is second ward meeting, and then we're supposed to have a general work study discussion. It sounds like this committee has a number of people they would like to have in that discussion following. The list that I made was the counselors. I did speak with former counselor Pignatelli. She said Thursdays weren't great, so I was gonna send her that Monday and confirm before we put that on there for sure. But we also had mentioned Chief Heffron and Bill Pease. Did you say that was the 18th as well?
So if I may?
Sure.
Couple of things. First and foremost, I'd like to apologize for last week. I was not able to attend. Deputy Chief Testaverde attended. Neither of us were aware of what the agenda item was. We were not advised that we were to be doing a presentation on it, so I apologize greatly. I would have altered my schedule, my personal schedule, to be here with a presentation ready. Hopefully, again, I apologize to him because I threw him under the bus and he had to operate on the fly, so I apologize. But moving forward, any expectations of us, just let me know via email and I'll be happy to be fully prepared for it. I'm not sure of the date of Bill Pease, but he spoke to me today. He is prepared to speak.
I have that information actually, because I had reached out to Mr. Pease, because he is retired Hudson law enforcement, currently the accreditation manager for the Nashville Police Department, and he indicates he is probably going to be available for our meeting on the 21st.
The 21st, okay.
And I will connect you via email with former Chief Tim Heffron.
Okay, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
And
All right.
finally, I will give you an answer. I'll find out the answer to that process from the governor to the executive council, and I'll submit that via email.
That would be great. Thank you. Okay, so it sounds like we have our next ward meeting. We're gonna try to do as many of the counselors that we could potentially get there. I know that Deb has said she will try to make it for that 18th. I will double check that, and I will see if there's anyone else. Do we want to have the current commissioner, I keep mixing it up. The current executive counselor invited to one or both of the upcoming meetings, see what fits their schedule. It's tough because it's like, I'd love it to be always all the counselors, but sometimes Monday doesn't work for this person, Thursday and we're already working within, people who have built up their schedules. So I guess my question would just be, Pignatelli can come. Do we also want to talk to the current counselor?
Yes.
I see a yes, okay. So Wheeler, okay. I'll add that. I have a list of people to reach out to. And then we're confirmed with Clea, trainer, is that what he is? Evaluator, there we go, okay, on the October 21st. So back to where we started, are there other pieces that we want to make sure that we get in the next few weeks that we haven't covered? My original list was past, current chiefs, we talked about past, current commissioners, and counselors.
So I think it's good that we invite some former chiefs and some former commissioners. And, I'm sure we can brainstorm on a list.
Yeah, I think that would be great, and we can do it via email or phone call, however that works. I'm sure you guys know more former than I do. All right, so I have that as a priority item here. Anything else before we close the meeting? Go ahead, Alderman Wilshire.
Tonight, we had an opportunity for the public, the wards one,
Yeah.
I don't have my agenda in front of me.
They got mixed around, but yes.
Okay, so is there a better way that we can advertise or get the word out there or market this somehow so that people participate, show up, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one that I've struggled with all kinds of things. I mean, we have public comments for, big stuff and nobody shows up. So I'm always grappling with, like, we put it at the typical places like library and online, et cetera, but
Maybe we
I'm
could
open to
have something
suggestion here.
scrolling on TV, or, I don't know, it just seems like it'd be nice to get some public here, more than the couple. I don't mean to insult any of you
No.
No,
that
no,
showed
no.
up,
No,
but-
I agree, and that was part of it. I mean, that was one of the big pieces that I wanted. So, you know, there has been suggestions that sometimes weekends are better for people. But, and I know that, Ms. Susie had talked about, you know, within her ward, it's not everybody's going on the city website, that kind of thing. Is there a way to get some outreach out? I would say that my initial reaction is our next meeting doesn't have to be specific to those wards. Let's just get anyone who would like to speak on it to come. And we can work on getting some outreach out there. So you said the TV, I think there's a couple other things we could do, to get it out there. Anything else?
Madam Chair, I have a comment actually
Sure.
from the
Go ahead.
last session last week. I thought it was really informative to hear from what's happening now in the state of New Hampshire in terms of commissioners and how they're being chosen and those types of things, you know. And Ms. Shaheen and who was it, Ava Costello and
Mark
the sheriff, I forget his name.
Brave, Mark
Yeah,
Brave.
it was quite informative, so I would say to the public, if you've not heard anything other than what we've done or what's been said in this room, that you might go back and take a look at, what was the date on that one?
It was the 30th. It was last Thursday, I believe.
Okay, September 30th, commission meeting, if I'm saying it, the name of it correctly, but
Work
No,
study group.
you're good.
Work
We're
study.
work study,
Yeah.
commission, yeah,
work study,
study commissioner meeting, yeah.
because it was quite enlightening.
Yeah, yeah. I was sad to miss it, so. Okay, if we are all set, we went through discussion. There is a public comment on here, but I don't see any public here. Does anyone from the committee want to make additional remarks? Very good. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
All right, the motion is to adjourn by roll call. Could you please call the roll?
Sure. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Mary Lou Blaisdell,
Yes.
Kendra Smith,
Yes.
Terry Baxter,
Yes.
and Nick Dahl votes yes.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:23 PM. Have a great night, everyone.